We could probably get started on our topic today without him, but we decided we'd talk about a bit on. We ran a poll probably like a week or two ago on asking our audience if you guys think the church is creating feminine men. Number one, it was like 75% said yes. So we thought it'd be interesting to talk about that topic alongside like why men aren't at the church, because I think part of the problem with the perception of that is people enter the church today, the modern church, and they just look around and what they see is kind of like not masculine men.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of like a chicken and egg problem. It's like, is the church producing more feminine men, or is the church environment just pushing the masculine men out? So there's some dynamics at play that are interesting, but I know, John, you definitely have some pretty staunch opinions on it yourself. Like, you don't attend like a modern church. What is your kind of overview thoughts on that?
Well, it's a complicated problem because, in the West, we have a church that is different from other churches everywhere. So I'd start off by just saying the church we're kind of right now would be the church in the West. The church
be like the mega church design, the hill, like they all kind of follow that Hillsong.
Yeah.
Big lights, cameras in action, and giant worship, like all the efforts put into worship service, really, and a TED Talk sermon.
Exactly, man. And and there's again, we're critiquing. So like, it originally, when I first started going to church kind of as a kid, and mom's dragging us in there, and she was definitely a creature of like, if it didn't work, she'd go to a different place. Dad was checking the doctrines at that point, so we weren't afraid to change churches. And I had sort of the gamut experience of going to the really big ones and then going to the tiny, like 12 churches where it's just like very small. But I think the majority of people obviously go to the kinds of churches that you just described. It's kind of the status quo here in America. It's kind of like our cookie cutter McDonald's style go-to for church experience. So you don't have to go very far to find that kind of a church. Chances are you got one within a few miles of your house. But my opinions are they've kind of grown out of the and so I'll start by saying something positive about them. First of all, I view them as like an estuary, like where the little fishes kind of come in. There's not a whole lot of predators or a whole lot of challenges for them. It's nice shallow water. They're not going to get scared, and it's a place for them to grow. But if you want to grow a little more deeply, that's kind of where I see the issues with masculinity and what they're serving up to the men in particular, because they're the leader of the household. Getting these guys to realize their roles from a biblical standpoint rather than just like what sounds nice, and so I'd say my biggest critique is that they say to the man to act like the head of the household and emulate Jesus, and what they do is they kind of fragment Jesus's story as an example of his self-sacrifice, and that kind of self-sacrifice thing takes the lead role, and they forget about the other components of Jesus's personage and character and what he does for the church as a caretaker. And so it becomes this kind of imbalanced thing, because obviously it's easy to talk about the servant's part and self-sacrifice because the other part's a little hard. It's like rebukes, it's challenging, it's correcting, it's directional. That kind of stuff, it makes people uncomfortable.
Especially in like a conflict avoidant culture that we have. Like,
yeah,
they just want to take the easy way. And I saw a good quote. I think it was Dalrock, basically, because I think what's used a lot today from like a doctrine standpoint is that servant leader, I don't know, methodology or whatever, which sounds great, but the quote was like, yeah, they preach 99% servant, 1% leader. In the end. And I think that's where a lot of the problem from the male's role standpoint comes in the church, is they take on like Jesus is the lion and the lamb, and they take on the lamb role and then completely ignore the lion role, and they kind of turn into doormats in the end.
Yes. Yeah, and you guys have seen it too, and you guys went to the same church, right, for a while. You guys, and like, I know you guys are close friends and grew up in the same town. Did you guys have the same church experience, like that kind of thing?
We we actually didn't necessarily have the same experience. We didn't go to the same church, but we went to the same school, and so that's how we were friends. So we kind of have, I mean, fairly similar, but it wasn't exactly the same church. I will say though, you know, Mike saying that a lot of the lamb part of, um, like the lamb part is preached. I think also what's missing is definitely like a focus on like sacrifice. I think that, the whole like shepherding the flock that, a pastor's role is, that sacrifice part I feel like is missing too. And also I've had the opportunity lately to kind of attend a number of different churches, and they're all different denominations and stuff. And so I think in a general sense that, yes, in the West, this like feminization of men and its leaders is apparent and is evident and is happening. But I will say there's definitely exceptions. And one of the churches that I've been going to, it's a Baptist church. One of the
Oh yeah.
one of the pastors, he is a 24-year Army veteran, and he is that, like, at the podium. He is an Army guy at the podium. And so he totally like evokes leadership and strength and power. And it's like when he starts preaching, I am locked in. Just the way that he preaches to you, he's super direct. I like to call them PowerPoint pastors. Like, a TED Talk, they're just going through the PowerPoint, hit their verse here or there. They got their, one-liners that they say. This
They
guy
always got throwing jokes too. It's like they're a lot of them are like,
Yeah.
they think they're comedians. It's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
This guy is like straight out of the Bible. We're going to read the first chapter of all of Exodus or whatever, and it's like we're just running through it. And it's just it's fantastic.
Hey, you're gonna hurt.
Yeah, exactly. That's how he it's like it's basically your first day of like Christian boot camp, and this guy is going to just give it to you. So that has been fantastic. It's unfortunate he's not the lead pastor at the church. And the lead pastor is definitely like a completely different, there's a completely different vibe to him. This guy is like, he's like 6'3", the Army guy's like 6'3" or 4. He's huge, wears cargo pants when he's preaching. And like the main pastor, he's, very prim and proper. He's a tall, lanky dude, and nothing against tall, lanky dudes. I'm a tall, lanky dude for sure. But he definitely doesn't give off that feeling of leadership.
Yeah.
And there's been some other churches I've gone to as well where the pastor is just, and just the leadership in general, it's not very, the leadership part of it is really in title only. They don't act that way. They don't carry themselves that way. And even in kind of the way that they preach, I don't know, it kind of just leaves me wondering when it's going to get over.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I see, like our little sister Salome, she's a Muslim, and looking into just try to connect with her. Joe actually read the whole Quran in an effort to sort of get on her level, and I'm watching videos of the way these guys preach, and there's a certain emphatic nature that is present, and I feel like sometimes in our church, it would benefit them, like you said, a Baptist church. Like many times in the Baptist churches that I've went to, they have more of that sort of emphatic. They speak the truth and like they really believe it, and their lives are connected to it. And that to many people is a testimony in and of itself. It's like, okay, these people really freaking believe it. They're here. There's like this directness, like you said, about the talking and things. And many times, like for me, when I look at a masculine man, or I try to equate what's masculine, there's the go-tos and sort of the cliches and all that. They're definitely true to some degree or not. But like leading a group of people, like you brought up the sacrifice, like what does it mean to actually be a good leader, to influence the men to want to be better, to challenge themselves? It means telling the hard truths in a way that is not trying to like cover up the sharp edges. It's like, here it is. You're man enough to deal with it. It's kind of like when your dad sat down and talked to you about something where you're like, he's not talking like a kid anymore, you know, or something like that. And it's like a version of truth that people connect to. I think the church has forgotten that, you know.
I like Simon left a comment here. He said the constant talk on the virtue of obedience is infuriating, often coming from effeminate and obese ministers.
Yeah,
Which that's, you know, a huge problem I think in the church too. It's just like there's a lack of accountability on the physical side in the church. I know, Dave, you mentioned like you were well, just to back up on the minister part, it's like it's hard to take, I think, sometimes a message seriously from someone who puts zero effort into maintaining their health and their physical health. I think you just lose some sense of credibility almost when you're like preaching like you know, having discipline and obedience and, you know, things that are good morally, but you can't keep in check just eating like it's just, it loses your credibility, I think.
doesn't add up, man. You know.
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying, doesn't add up. It's just a short circuit right there.
Yeah. I was just at a men's retreat, and that's definitely one of the vibes I got with a lot of the guys there. I mean, it was a lot of guys that they don't care about their health. A lot of guys that don't care about their appearance, and you know, and a lot of people are just used to that. And that came across too with the speaker as well, like a guy that, you know, definitely like the dad bod, if not more, and his whole demeanor during, you know, as he preached and during the whole event was just like a nice guy, and like he just again did not evoke what you would expect from a leader and what you'd want from a speaker, especially at a men's retreat where guys are going there to get fired up. They want to have some guy time, and it was unfortunate because the event itself was at a kids summer camp, just on a lake, and so they had a lot of just kids related things to do for, you know, outside of the actual speaking, the sermons, and like they had a arts and crafts area, they had a board game area, they did have some like gym stuff going on, and by that I mean like they had a volleyball tournament, I mean, which is fun, basketball tournament, and they had a rock.
It wasn't the right masculine vibe, huh?
What's that?
This wasn't the right masculine vibe there.
Well, no, it's like half the guys were like over 50, you know, overweight, just kind of sitting around, you know, not doing much. And definitely during the times when they're speaking, I'm just like, I wanted the guy up on stage to be like, all right, everyone, we're going to do 50 push-ups or something. Like, just actually get active. And it's like, oh, they did like a head, shoulders, knees, and toes thing for like an icebreaker. And I'm like, we're all men here. why are we doing this?
Well, it is
and
embarrassing.
It was just a super weird vibe. Like, it demanded nothing out of the men. And so I felt quite unmotivated from it, unfortunately. I was thinking, this is such a great opportunity to reach a bunch of dudes, and it just didn't happen. Our individual group that I went with, it was super great because we were getting up super early. We had our own kind of study time where we were getting into some super deep conversation with each other. Right. And so like that's awesome that, you know, we can come together as our own personal group and, you know,
But you
talk
didn't
about some things that
you didn't need to go there for that,
but
in
I
other
do
words.
need to go there for that. That's the thing.
And that's that's the heart of this whole conversation too. It's like I think, man, the church environment today, a lot of men are just like kind of like we've done with the Iron Disciples. We've made our own environment and our own kind of church in that aspect, because the modern church is lacking that. I don't know. Just I think part of it too is like people be like, okay, what's the solution? Like what needs to change? Go change it, etc. Some of it is it's like you don't know until you see it, because we've only been surrounded by what the problem is essentially. And so like you mentioned the church you went to that had like the Army drill sergeant guy preaching, and it's like, okay, when you're in that environment, you're like, okay, now this feels better, like, because you haven't seen it. So I think that's a big part of the problem is just we haven't been in the environment to even know. And I think that's why you see just less, and it's just not attractive to men in the modern church. Also want to toss out to the audience too. We have one spot, so if you ever want to chime in, you can request to join the video. Well, we would love to have you. So,
Right on.
I do want to say, even just so I'm not down there with you guys, but I've been able to see kind of the impact of Iron Disciples in the group from afar, and like seeing the impact that you're having on young men, bringing guys in that don't have that sense of brotherhood and community, where guys are going to push you forward and expect more of you. Like that is so impactful on a young man. And like myself, I have my own group with my cousins, and I've become super close with them ever since we started our own, like, hey, let's just start challenging each other on just growing better on our faith, reading more, studying more, calling each other out on stuff. And like I have grown exponentially since actually getting into like a close-knit brotherhood and group where we as men can, talk to each other as guys, as men, treat each other as men, and, expect the best out of each other. And I think there's so many guys that are missing out on that, and that's not being focused on in a church setting. And that's where, like, I want to say it's definitely up to the men at the church. Like, I think it is on them to say, okay, I'm going to take on this duty for myself. I'm going to sacrifice and, help these guys out there that are lost and don't have that sense of brotherhood. Because I think that's where a lot of solutions are going to come from. It's from guys, pulling up their bootstraps and be like, all right, this is on me. I'm not going to rely on the pastor. I'm not going to rely on the leadership of the church. I'm going to do this because this needs to be done. It's not being done by the church, so it's up to us. And that's what I see, Iron Disciples doing. And
You're right.
the impact of it has been, I think, just incredible.
You're right. I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of my hesitance to go to the church is because I still haven't been able to successfully analyze what needs to be done in it. So it's like, if I'm just going to go in, be part of that group, and I don't know what exactly has to be done, I'm kind of not being part of the solution. So it's like some reconnaissance has to be done. Some kind of evaluation has to go down. And like you said, finding it in those smaller friend groups, like what the Iron Disciples is doing, the Lord has been slowly revealing and sort of remedying sort of that vacuum of friendship, of what real fellowship looks like, the accountability elements, some of that, like when iron sharpens iron is kind of the catchphrase, or the part that where the metal comes together, there's the sparks just kind of flashing off, right? And that's friction. It looks super cool, but if you're that sword and you're the other sword, it's friction. It's literally tearing parts of you off to make you sharper. So we're starting to get an idea what that actually is, slowly but surely. But it's not something I know a ton about. It's like you said, there's like that, the Holy Spirit's impressing on your heart, something's wrong, and you got to work to figure it out.
And I would say too, I feel like, one of the solutions too is, if we look at the New Testament, it's these people, I don't think most of them were meeting in a giant mega church, one guy's preaching or whatever, they're singing, oceans for the 200th time. Like, they were meeting in homes together. I think in Acts it talks about they were meeting together, eating together, just being literally a family. And like, there's so many people that, are coming from broken homes. They don't know how to, act amongst brothers or people. And so I think too, like, I feel like the solution is shifting away from these huge mega churches and actually like being one-on-one with one another. My own church, so I was talking about that Baptist church and some others that I've gone to, and that's just churches I've gone on Sunday. My main church is actually Tuesday nights, and we have dinner together. It's a couple-hour thing, and we actually dive in like super deep into a topic, or I should say into a book of the Bible or a chapter, break it down in a certain way. We go through it. And that has also been just tremendous in the amount of kind of, new ideas and thinking about a verse or something a little differently, putting it into further context and having the time to do that. That has been tremendous as well. And so, yeah, I think like, I think this whole like Sunday morning for an hour, I think it's just lacking in what it provides someone. And I think that comes out through the leadership there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And even thinking about churches around the world, even in like Francis Chan's Letters to the Church, he talks about these underground like home churches in China or Africa or whatever. And like those people, their faith is so strong, and you don't see that here. So, I mean,
that element of persecution, I think, is what really.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the West, you have to self-persecute. You have to go out and look for it, and it's kind of what self-humiliation is too. It's like fasting, prostration during prayer. A lot of the reasons why I like the sort of Eastern Orthodox churches, because they demand it from their followers. Like, you're going to fast this month, you're going to do this stuff. If you want to be a part of this congregation, there are expectations. And these expectations are for you to grow. And if you want to grow, you have to have sunlight, you have to have soil, you have to have fertilizer. We know what's going to make you grow. So you have to do these things. And that's something that this church is kind of like, hey, are you guys having a good time? All right, hang out, bro. It's funny, you said about the Acts, it's like they ate together. It's like the only thing we do right is we can eat together. But, besides that, we're eating the wrong stuff and way too much of it when the church gets together. So, yeah, that's a challenging thing. It's being able to, because most of the time, like when we were actually in Matthew, was it 17 or was it 18? One of the two, where Jesus talks about how to handle a brother, and so you go to him directly. You don't talk about the issue with your wife or with somebody else. You don't go seeking out this counsel to try and, give you consolation in the fact that you think you're right. You skip all that. You go directly to the brother, and then if that doesn't work, you get a few others, and then you go to the brother. If that doesn't work to the church, that never, like very rarely happens in the church. And the reason why is because people don't go directly to the brother. It becomes a political event. They talk to their wife, they talk to their friend. All of a sudden it feels like there's all these people talking and stabbing knives in your back. And then when they do confront, the person's like, I'm bouncing, I'm going to a different church. No one can stand up to that iron sharpening iron. And that's why we're all walking around like dull, crappy pieces of steel. Just sit and be like, oh, wow, God loves this. And he does. But, I mean, it could be better. It could be polished. It could be sharp. It could, go in between the sinews and separate bone from flesh when it has to.
Well, I think part of it is the expectations, too, are so low. And, like, what you said about like Francis Chan's book, for those who don't know that book, Letters to the Church, Francis Chan built a mega church, and he wrote this. He stepped away from it when he realized like his church. He had a good quote. His church was like designed, and I think this goes for a lot of the mega church, to fill seats rather than create disciples. And I think that would be how I would sum up today's modern American church. And because you don't have any like skin in the game, you don't really require much out of your audience. You're basically just filling seats. A lot of it is, almost from a business standpoint too. They need to fill seats to keep the lights on. They got these, $10 million buildings they're paying for, and this, 100-person staff. And so they got, a lot of, they can't ruffle too many feathers. If 10% of their tithe base leaves, what happens to their bottom line? So you got that problem. And then thinking about the Chinese, like the church you mentioned in China, like on how real they are probably as Christians. Well, I think when you're under persecution, you find out who's the real true believers, because they're going to stick around. Whereas, like, if we went under that here, it's like, how quickly would the church shrink if we went under persecution in America? Because how many are just showing up to church because it's like, do they truly believe, or are they just kind of like, it's like a cool community to be around? I like the music. I like how the message makes me feel. I kind of feel like I checked my moral box for the week, and yeah.
Well, I think like people have this false idea that, what Christianity is, or the churches in America, like that's what it's supposed to be like. And, the U.S. is not the center of Christianity. Like, there are far more Christians in, across the world, China for sure, Africa, the Middle East, South America. And that's where, like, I think we see so many of the problems is because we've accepted this idea that, yep, you just go to church on Sundays, and it's kind of the same old every single week, and that's just what it is. And I think we're just missing so much, and that's where discipleship and actually, having a personal approach to each other is so vital, and creates like stronger leaders and guys that are actually willing to step up and do work at their church, to kind of, move it in a more truthful direction.
Yeah. Hearing you guys talk about that, you remember that time, I think it's like Matthew 14 or whatever, where Jesus is, he breaks out the big guns. He's like, all right, you love all this stuff. I mean, healing you guys are, enjoying all these free meals and healing. And he's like, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And everyone's like, whoa, that's all right. You took a left turn into Scaryville right there. And the disciples were like, yeah, we lost a bunch of people because you said that. And I see that in the church. It's like, these seats that are being filled, they may as well not be filled, because when you're given the truth, when Jesus says you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood, if they're really submitting to the teacher, whether they understand it or not, or it sets well in their heart or whatever, they're going to submit to that, right? So then you have a real conversion. You have God calling you out into the wilderness. You have those really tough places, and you're going to submit. And that's what we're not hearing in the church in the West. We're not hearing the hard truths that are a part of our beliefs, that are a part of the Gospels. We're very much getting a fragmented. Even when we go on our mission trips, like you're talking about, it's mainly something for people to post Facebook pictures about how great they are. They're not really going into like the mission and doing things that would like really make them uncomfortable. Like, no one knows how to self-persecute. I'm not saying I know how either, but I do know it's a thing to learn how to do. Prostrating yourself during prayer, simple things like that, going on a fast. Like Joe and I are on our third day of our fast today. They're not fun in the beginning, but they yield fruits. And that's kind of, I just think about Jesus. Like, he's like, I'm going to tell these people this, and a lot of them are just going to walk away because it's not what they want. But this isn't about what you want. This is.
I think I lost did we lose their audio? Maybe their phone's dying.
Phone is dying.
Do you have a charger?
I do, but it's like not long enough. There's one. Yeah, it's not long enough.
To Joe's phone if you have to. But yeah, back to like specifically men in the church. I think it's one of those things like, what do you do? What is like the solution to it? We get told a lot, like when we bring up this, I get comments of like, well, you should just like go either man up and go fix it, or like the men in the church are the problem. They're not manning up and fixing it. And it's like, okay, well, is that the actual solution? What is the solution? And that is to be determined. But I think part of what we're seeing here and what we're just kind of doing naturally, which us creating like our own group, David, you said you created kind of a small group with like your friends. I think that's the start of a lot of it, is small communities that are pursuing. I would rather hear a bunch of my male friends in a group like ours or yours, Dave's, than them just going to some big modern mega church every Sunday, because I know like the difference in what they're getting out of it.
And it really just starts with one guy. Like my small group is just 3 of us, and like again, the exponential growth in like your walk is incredible. And so I mean, that's the thing, is just getting the message out there too, of like guys that are in the position to even just start something with one other guy or a couple of dudes. Like that is the start. That is the key. And I remember hearing something from, it was like a TikTok or something, but it was John MacArthur, and he was laying a lot of blame on like back in the 1960s and like the sexual revolution and everything. He was talking about how like that became a leading, force, and even in the church. And then ever since then, over the past, like 60 years, that is such an underlying, factor at play, to where now it's like, yeah, there is these feminine men who have just kind of let themselves get run over, and they're in charge of stuff, and they're leading the church, or at least their church. And I think the solution to that is for guys that, won't allow themselves to be swayed, to step in, and it's not going to be an overnight solution by any means.
Like a generational change.
Yeah, exactly. Step in and actually start, moving and grooving, because eventually, like, everything's going to become a mega church.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think you're right. Like Rollo's book on religion is exactly what John was saying there, what you're saying John was kind of saying, where feminism kind of just invaded the church. And I mean, I would, like, you can just tell that the church is kind of designed to attract women, I think, just from the get-go. And Rollo goes into a lot of statistics on how women are like the primary tithe check writers, and like all these reasons for that. And like kind of like all the programs in the church like are all kind of women oriented. And you got all these things because you need the check written by the woman to keep flowing in. So there's a lot of that going on, plus just the feminist thinking. Like you can just see how, like we did that podcast on Christian kosher, how the church has evolved over time and allowed things that wouldn't have been allowed before. Like I saw recently a church, I think it was like a leader or some church, I think it was in the Baptist side of things. I think they had like hired a woman pastor, and I think the leader or something, basically they were like, they noped that idea because biblically
Right, Mark?
that's not supposed to happen. And as a result, they got blasted about it, because it's like, what? You can't have, women pastors? And it's like, well, if you're going to stand up to do the biblical way today, you're going to get some major backlash on some of those things because of feminism. And you're not going to fill seats doing that at all. So if you're reliant on a tithe check to keep your show running, you're going to bend to what culture's doing.
Yeah, I've been so humbled by the Iron Disciples teaching me, just like, if you're going to be legit in your discipling, like, I don't see how you could do more than maybe 3 or 4 people, possibly, like really taking them seriously. Like, I just don't, you don't have enough time. You don't have enough bandwidth, so it's really small in the way that people like mega churches. It's like, when you go to school, you have your school friends. You don't tell them all about your life. They don't know what's going on in you. There's not a codependent relationship there that's of essential value. You're just there by virtue of the experience. When you're codependent and you have real discipleship going on, like Brother David's group of 3 guys, that's where I started to learn. Like, this is way deeper. What the expectations that God has for us to interact with one another and become codependent as one body, it's way deeper. It's not this superficial body experience where everybody kind of feels the same way for a second, because you can get that at a concert. You could get that, watching an opera. You could get that so many different places. What's really the exclusive offering that we have as a church to offer people is to come into fulfillment with your brothers and sisters in Christ. That's what we have as an exclusive offering. That's what you don't see that much of, because you're going to piss people off. It's like, remember, did you guys ever go to karate when you were a kid or something like that? Did your parents ever?
No. Karate? Like martial arts? No.
Jiu-jitsu, some kind of a thing where you're like self. Never? Oh, you did? All right. So like when you go there, you're prepared for your teacher to kind of be an asshole, to like make you do push-ups. And for me, I was super excited. I was like, this is great. I'm going to be treated kind of like a man. He's going to expect me to do push-ups. If I'm not holding my pose right, he's going to tell me. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a good experience. And I feel like that sort of realness, that truth, and being able for men to speak like men, not like, oh, I'll pray about it. You got an issue? I'll pray about it because it's awkward and I don't want to talk about all the ins and outs of the problem. And it's just a serious, like, yeah, I'm going to have to absorb your life here. It's like, that's going to take time for people to learn how to do, but it's also the most exciting part. Like Brother Dave's learning, like we learn in the Iron Disciples. If you can go the distance with 3 guys, you're going to feel like you understand them. You're going to feel less lonely in the world. You're going to actually have some brothers, so it's worthwhile, but it's not this exciting, it's not like going to a concert where everybody's just pumping their fists at the same time,
Yeah,
Mark.
I'm gonna read some of the comments.
I want to shout. Yeah, I know a lot of churches, they don't deep dive into scripture. It's like, it's boring for them. And that's one of the reasons why I just don't go to church. I've never found it very fruitful for my own personal walk.
Brad said they're in need of more expository preaching rather than surface level preaching. Definitely. Mega church, from Mark, mega churches I've been to are about entertainment and lack depth in scripture. Jake said, which he also nails this, is stupid. The church never addresses feminism. It's like almost like they don't even know it's a problem. Which that's also true. That's
somebody.
I don't think I've ever heard like a pastor really dare go there.
Yeah, he's right about that, because if you don't know there's a problem, you'll never think of a solution. You got to put a name to it. And if they don't talk about feminism, then you kind of you don't know. You just don't know. So if I was to go to church again, it would probably be like Orthodox Church, something like that. Like an Eastern Orthodox. Yeah, like Eastern Orthodox, or maybe.
I was talking with Anton about that, and because he's going to an Eastern Orthodox. Shout out to Anton, miss him, but it shows it's a cult. You can just see it in the culture. Because I asked him, like, so is the Orthodox Church growing? And he said yes, but it's other. I guess it's just growing from. It's not like growing from like creating more Christians. They're just kind of taking in different Christians. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, I like what they do, but are they actually like evangelizing and bringing people to Christ, or are they just kind of like got this cool club for the super Christians, which is kind of it's a good question. I don't know.
I feel like in the West, to be honest with you, our evangelizing, this is just my personal opinion, 80% of it probably should happen in the churches, because those seats are just being filled by nominally alive Christians. So, I mean, I would say, yeah. I mean, plus everybody's heard the gospel here pretty much, It's not like China or something where they're like, they really don't know. Most of the time they think they know what it is, and everybody who they talk to is reinforcing the fact that they think that this cliche is Christian. So when they run into an Eastern Orthodox, like, these are some weirdos right over here, like,
Yeah.
I think
I like it.
I think so many people go to church nowadays here in the West because we have this mentality of like, I want as much stuff as I can get, like very materialistic here in the West. And I feel like that kind of, bleeds into people's attending church. Like they're going there so that they can get something out of it that makes them feel good. Like, kind of recharge for the week. Okay, now I can go watch football again. Where I think what's missing again is like that sacrifice part of it. Like once you're good to go, like once you're saved, my opinion is it's time for you to start being involved. And I mean, hand up, I've been saved for a long time, and I mean, I didn't really realize this for most of my entire life. And so that's when I realized I was like, I mean, the church, only part of it is really like you just going there to have a message like given to you. Like the church needs to grow, and everyone needs to, sacrifice in that regard, and especially that burden and that duty is placed on the men to sacrifice and to lead. So I just think that's what's missing, is just people just go to church because they want to feel good. They want to hear a nice sermon that talks about, I don't know, Noah on the ark or something, like whatever. And, not anything that's like super hard and, demanding of the people there.
Well, they do. It's kind of like almost, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like the big churches do have the giant like get involved push, but it's like really kind of surface level stuff that just, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like, here, go sign up to be a door greeter, or sign up to direct parking at the church. It's stuff like that, and I feel like it's, especially for like dudes, it's like, okay, like I've been there, done that. I used to lead a greeting team at the one church I went to, and like I get, like, it's kind of like the estuary thing. Like I think brand new Christian, like maybe that's attractive. I think it's good to just get to know people in the community of that church, but I don't know if you feel like you're really like got this, you're really like making some sort of impact, directing traffic in the parking lot. I think it's more of a relational thing, as far as where you're potentially making an impact.
Yeah, I'd say like you got a specific anointing that God made you to do, and it's going to take some hard work to find what that is. And it may be something very humble, like you might just be the milkman, I don't know, a postman, but you do what you're, as long as you're obeying and you put in the hard enough work to know that you're not just being comfortable with your walk, then you're obeying and being true to the anointing you've been called to. And that's where you find fulfillment in your walk, because you can't, it's narrow is the gate, few are chosen. Like it's all about this. Like if you read the New Testament and you really think about the figures in the Old Testament, like when you see David praying for his son Solomon, he's like, I pray that he worships with a whole heart, a whole heart. And you see that all throughout Psalms, like whole heart worship, whole heart devotion. And that's the only way you're going to find your anointing, is if you got your whole heart in it. If you just kind of do the, like David was saying, the Sunday ritual thing, and you just kind of nod your head at your life like I got this together, then you're not self-persecuting enough, because you have to self-persecute in order to serve. It needs to, if you're giving and it's not, if you're lacking, like the widow with the three little copper things, and it hurt to give that, like your flesh kind of is like, what are you doing? And you're like, yeah, you're going to put up with this because this is what we do. Then you're not giving. You're not really true. I mean, you're giving, and that's why it's like the estuary part, because like if I was to take a new convert and be like, look, pick up your cross, die to yourself today. I mean, unless it was me, I'd be like, okay, that sounds pretty cool because my life has been crap up until now, so maybe. But most people are going to be scared. They should. But the beauty is that, like, out of that sacrifice, you actually get fruits. You actually get true bonds with your brother. You actually get good life experiences. Your life is not a freaking rerun every Sunday. You know, and to me, that's suffering in the worst conditions. That's why John and I don't go to church, because I'm like, this is a rerun. I may as well be playing at a metal show, getting drunk with my friends, and them telling me the same story every time. Like, it's just as horrifying as that situation. It's probably more fun, actually. What?
Well, I think too, you mentioning like, you know, die yourself, like it's scary. This is scary. This is your faith. What the Bible teaches is very, very serious. And like, yeah, if your walk is not scary to you, I mean, man, you're missing out on a lot. And I think that just comes across again in like the Western men. It's just super passive. I'm not going to get outside of my comfort zone. I think about in James 2, like the very end of James, like, you know, he who knows what to do and doesn't do it sins. Like, that's a very scary verse. And like, there are so many people unwilling to get out of their comfort zone. Hand up, I'm right there too. Like, it's very difficult to get out of our comfort zone, but I mean, in order to build men, it has to be done. And again, I think it's on men to encourage other men, you know, to take those steps in faith.
Brad's comment here, I think, kind of nails what I was actually going to bring up next. He said more Christians today need to be capable of being able to defend their faith and having a decent grasp on apologetics. And like, I view that as part of our, you could just say, sacrifice and responsibility. Like, if you're real about your faith, you need to study it to know how to defend it. Like Peter calls us to that. And I think, like, because so many Christians, I know we were talking about on the podcast we were filming today, like on just like being able to give your testimony and like defend your reason for your belief. You like that's a requirement. Like, that should be preached, that you need to go. Like, it should be a responsibility to go study on that topic.
It is,
because I've seen how in my own life when I studied that, like, when you're like a new Christian, you don't know anything, you do not want to talk to anyone about your faith, because it is like, I'm going to get hit with these questions that I don't know the answers to, and it's going to be awkward and whatnot. But once you study it, you know already the questions coming. You know the atheist arguments that they're going to throw at you, and you're like ready for them, and like I look forward to them, and it makes you so much more bold in your faith and as far as sharing it with people and just bringing it up in conversation, because you kind of feel like I've heard every rebuttal that they're going to throw at me, and then when you back that up with like actually living as a Christian does, you kind of blow people's minds, because a lot of issues I've seen with people in these discussions is usually not like actually the apologetics part. They don't really have a problem with a lot of people don't have a problem with like God existing. A lot of people don't really have a problem with Jesus or the gospel. It's like they just dealt with crappy Christians, and it turns them off to the whole even idea. And so if you combine like actually living your life somewhat like a Christian should with apologetics knowledge, like, you can be such a tool to be used by God in that sense.
Couldn't agree more. We just got another comment down here from Jake. Said apologetics should be essential, like a one-on-one class, and it's often forgotten.
Churches are scared of it. It's weird. Like, there's literally churches, they don't even like want to go there because they view it as like argumentative. Like, you're going to argue people if you like learn this stuff, and it's just like the wrong. Well, few churches go there.
Yeah, the nature of what we do is inherently polemic. You know, I mean, like, polemic. It's like it's going to inspire controversy. You know, because you're talking about the very nature of a person's existence and their life and where they're going to end up. You know, like, you really, it's like the stakes are high. Like David was saying, you should be scared, you know. And I feel like the first thing that people have to recognize is you have a spirit. You know, otherwise you're not going to have an apologetics talk or anything like that. And people, in order to get into apologetics, the beauty about apologetics, I mean, I think like the way that you encounter people as a believer means you're going to fall on your face. You're going to get a question that you just don't know how to answer, and then you're going to end up in the place that Mike's at, where he's more confident. He's sitting on a rock. You know, there's not going to be a little wind that just blows him away, and that's the conditioning of that manhood that you encounter by self-persecution. Like you said, how many conversations did you have to get into with atheists, with people who were contrary and they just were polemic at the core, and you had to learn. There was nobody who could teach you the way to do that other than you going out and doing it yourself, searching out good resources, educating yourself. That was your personal walk with God, getting stronger, and not just brushing it off like, oh, that person doesn't want to hear, or like there's so many excuses people tell themselves because they don't want to get into conversations that feel like conflict. But if you look at the New Testament, like that's all Paul did. He's walking into synagogues, he's getting his ass kicked, stoned, flogged, all kinds of stuff. And, it was what God wanted him to do, and eventually became so good at it. There's just tons of churches spawning from that. So, yeah, man, apologetics are essential. You need to know why you believe what you believe, and you need to be excited about talking to people about it when the topic comes up. If somebody submits their attention to you and asks you, why are you a Christian? Why do you believe that? That's a serious moment. Somebody's giving you their attention right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about in Acts, Stephen. He is such an incredible example of someone who is living boldly and died for it. Like, he absolutely would not give an inch, and he just boldly proclaimed, and then he was stoned for it. He is an incredible example. There's a guy that I really like following on YouTube. The channel is called Ask Cliff, and it's a father-son duo, and they go to college campuses across the U.S., and they just engage with students, apologetics, and Mike, like you were saying, like, there's no new question that comes up. They're all the exact same series of questions. And these guys, they go engage every student, every question, and the thing is that they're serious about it. They're not going to be this nice guy that's out to just, give you a nice pat on the back. Thanks for asking such a nice question. That they are going to engage with you, and they're going to spar with you intellectually. And that is so needed from men, to be willing to, unfortunately, you have to be willing to offend if you're going to, defend your faith. And these guys, they will spar with you intellectually. They will not hold back. They're very loving. I just mean by they won't hold back in their faith and their knowledge, and they're countering questions that students are asking them, because they're getting called out for a lot of things, a lot of hypocrisy that we see in Western Christianity, and especially in the past. And obviously that's not what's taught in the Bible, crusades and things like that. And these guys are very upfront with, no, your perception of Christianity by looking at other hypocritical Christians is wrong. What you need to do is look at the Gospels, look at the person of Jesus, and then make the decision. Is this what you want, sort of thing? And so anyone watching, I absolutely encourage watching those guys. It's very, very interesting. But yes, I totally agree. Like, having apologetics, having the knowledge, and being able to back up your faith, having that in your back pocket when it's necessary, like, that is so key in developing strong Christians and creating leaders.
Absolutely.
Brad had a comment here. What's your thoughts on lukewarm Christians and taking on holding them accountable, as well as yourself, in that manner? Which we've talked about that too, because that is such a interesting topic, especially with the verse in Revelations about Jesus and lukewarm Christians spitting them out. My personal opinion is they're probably the biggest detriment for Christianity. Often, just in my own conversations with non-Christians, it's like the rebuttal is mostly comes back to Christians they've dealt with. It's like, the girl I grew up with, she was a pastor's daughter. She's now not living that way. Her pastor dad ended up cheating on the wife. Like, there's endless stories like that are just like ruining people's perception of Christianity. And as far as holding them accountable, That's where you get all these responses like judge not lest you be judged, and all these different things that come into play. But I think I look at how strict Paul is on like removing people from the church that don't aren't measuring up, and like not even what's he say, like basically don't associate with, he lists a bunch of sins as far as like a Christian brother. And that's the big difference, I think, too, is like how you interact and hold accountable a non-Christian versus a Christian, and how we're called to differently view those things.
That's a really good point. I'm going to bring up two more to kind of support that, because judge not lest thee be judged. That's taking the wind out of a lot of people's sails that are trying to do the Lord's work. And I feel like they need to understand a couple things about that passage so that they can make themselves more effective in being accountable. So if you have a lukewarm Christian brother, that means you've already judged them. You've already judged their walk. You've decided that because of the things they're not doing or persisting in doing, there is an issue that they're not acknowledging that they know about. They have to know about it. They might be in denial of it or choose to remain oblivious to it, but there's a certain accountability that their conscience has that you can tell that they're sitting on the bench for too long, or they're not dealing with the sin issue, and you're bringing it up to them. So you've already judged them. That judging part has already happened. That passage specifically, after studying it, because it's important to study what Jesus is saying there, is to condemn or judge by condemning if they're going to heaven or hell. Like, that's God's job, but he does call us to judge our brothers and sisters because we're supposed to help each other grow. But your job is not to judge if they're going to heaven or hell.
And I think that's a term. That's like the problem there is like terms. Like judge is like a moral judgment of, like you said, heaven or hell in the long run. The term we're using here would be accountable, like holding someone accountable.
Exactly. And so that's the important part that I see is realizing, like, I'm not going to, somebody asked me, is he in hell because he committed suicide? I'm not going to answer that. It's not my job to answer. Somebody asked me if so-and-so is going to heaven, not going to answer that. It's not my place to, that's God's job. If somebody has a sin issue and I bring it up to them and they persist in that direction, more than anything, you have to understand that in order for somebody to be expelled from the church, like Paul said, they have to declare their sin issue is okay. Basically, like maybe a progressive church where it's like, you guys think that homosexuality doesn't constitute a sin? It's like, all right, I'm not going to hang out with you. I can't hang out with you, not in the same way that I would my Christian brothers, because you're choosing to be in this fallen state, and you have to remedy your walk before I can. And it seems really harsh on the surface, but it's actually handling them in love. Because if you keep them around and their sin issue is still going on, what's that going to cause them to do? Think it's okay. Think it's okay. You know, it doesn't do anything for anybody at the end of the day. So with, like, I would say with your lukewarm Christian friends or people, and I hesitate to say this, but you're questioning if their conversion is real or not, right? You got to be real with the fact that their lives are at stake, and open up the Bible with them and see what they know and what they don't know. A lot of times it's just ignorance, you know, and you got to be honest with yourselves. We are in a nation right now where people think it's okay to be that way. Like, the lukewarm Christian is the typical, that's the norm. They're doing it right. You know, it's the weirdos that have to be like the Pauls and the Silas's and Timothys of the New Testament that are challenging the church, correcting the church, doing those kind of things effectively, you know. So it's an uncomfortable job, but you got to keep doing it if you love them. If you love somebody and you feel like they're, you know, struggling with their faith for one reason or another, don't give up. You know, you got to keep on them. God put them in your life for a reason. You know, and it may not be something you crack in a year, 2 years. They might be there hanging around for 5 years, especially if they're family. But don't give up on them. Pray for them. I mean, if it comes to the point where you can't hang out with them, pray for them. You know, do that. But don't give up.
Yeah, too, is you got to earn the, like, don't go like holding people you like have no relationship with accountable. I think that's another thing Christians really fail on. It's like you hear the Christians, like, you know, judging some homosexual couple that's not even a Christian, or judging this or that people that aren't even like following your same. It's casting your pearls before swine, essentially. And so that, and then also you got to like hold, like you got to have a relationship with this person to really, I think, hold truly them accountable. Like they got to have you got to have mutual trust and stuff in this. You can't just be like going up to the random person at church that you think is doing something wrong and pointing it out to them. Like, no.
You gotta have some equity in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like the homosexuality thing, I have plenty of friends that are homosexuals. They have not come into grace yet. I am not judging them for their stuff. I'm not judging them for what they're doing in the same way that the church does. I love them. I understand they're not held to the same accountability and the same law that I have accepted and submitted myself to. You know, and I think a lot of people in the church, they fail on that because, yeah, they cast their pearls before the swine. They judge the unbeliever like he's accountable and has the Holy Spirit. It's like he's got nothing but himself, man. And that's why he's so messed up. You know, you got to have a heart for love for him.
Well, and like so many people, I feel like, you know, the Western Church, we've taught going and making disciples. I personally, I feel like we've been taught to go about it the completely wrong way. And that's why, you know, we see, you know, these sort of Westboro Baptist Church type people, you know, picketing, and they have their signs up that saying like you're going to hell and stuff like that. And like, you know, if we actually look at like, you know, what did Jesus actually command us? Like, what are the greatest commandments? You know, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And then the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's what we need to be doing. Is as you love God and as you build your walk with Him, you're going to outwardly express that to others, and you're going to love them because you know they are a creation of God. They are completely loved by God. And so we need to act in that regard as well. And like, as you love them, as you build a relationship with them, like, I guarantee in the right moments, God is going to give you the right words, the right context, the right scenario, whatever, to then, you know, breach that subject of salvation and belief and stuff like that. And so really, it all just starts with love. And the other thing is, you know, John, you're talking about, you know, loving other people is difficult. It's not an easy thing. And I was listening to a podcast by Chip Ingram, and he was talking about love, and he was saying, like, we have this idea that love is this nice feeling that we get, and it absolutely, I mean, it's part of it, but it's not the bulk of what love is. You know, as we learn, like, he talks about how love rejoices in truth. We read that in the Bible, that love demands truth. And so it's not this nice feeling thing. It's like, if I love someone and they're doing something wrong, or like, I know, like, you know, this person, I know where their heart is, and they're just going in the wrong direction for whatever reason. Like, it is on me having that relationship with them to confront them and get down and dirty, like, figure out what's going on, and it's going to hurt. Like, love hurts, truth hurts. And, you know, at times, yes, it's wonderful, but other times, like, it demands truth, and to get to the truth, it is going to be a painful process.
Agreed so much, man. I love hearing the brothers talk that way, because your brothers, no matter how much you love them, they're going to let you down. They're going to do all these things that you would never dream they would do, and you do that to yourself, you know, and you do that to the people you love too. So sometimes we just make this stupid move where we divorce ourselves because of the humanity that we're still contending with. And that's what makes us able to handle those problems, you know, like when you have a backslidden brother or a lukewarm Christian or somebody, it is on you. You know, it is on you.
The thing too, like, I'd like to add to, you know, the commandments from Jesus, like the final commandment from Jesus, they were in the upper room. He was with all his bros, all his disciples, and he told them, he's like, my final commandment I give to you, love each other as I loved you. And immediately preceding that, like he had just washed all his disciples' feet, including Judas. And so I feel like, you know, imagine yourself going and washing the feet of your enemy, like the person that is going to betray you. Like, you know, to ask that of a Western leader these days, like, man, that's a tall order, I feel like. And
I mean, I tell, yeah,
for guys to come to grips with that, it has to be done.
yeah, I tell like some of these guys who just begin, it sounds morbid, but think about death every morning, bro. Think about how small and how you don't know when your life's going to be taken from you. Like, think about the realities of your life. You got to unplug from the matrix. You got to unplug from this, you know, idea of permanence and all these things that you have taken for granted. Like, you really got to ponder these things and embed them in yourself, so that when you find these times where you have to love, like that's the thing that I want to remind everybody of, that is encountering the uphill battle that we all encounter and will continue to encounter, is that the flesh, it doesn't like it. It's always kind of contrary. You're always going to feel this tug and stuff, but there is a very definable, wonderful experience when your spirit is rejoicing in the truth, like love rejoices in truth. When you're doing those things, like when Paul was in prison with, I think, Silas, and you know, they're chained to the thing, you know, and they're just beaten, and all of a sudden they just start singing their worship songs, and everybody's like, well, what is going on here? And their spirits are rejoicing, you know, their bodies are completely broken. And that's something that we have. This is like our big gun. This is like our nuke, man. This is the thing that we have that no one else has. These are the exclusive rights we have as brothers and sisters in Christ, and we're barely learning how to tap into them, you know. So, and I know I want to learn more about it. I want to, in this journey with all of our brothers in this Western culture, it's almost like we're in a battle, but we're used to battling like monsters and things that look scary, and you know, but the battle we're in is all with these nice things. Like it's like Satan masquerading as the angel of light. Like, you got to realize these things, these nice things, are holding you back, you know, from
We're a battle against hedonism.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's one hashtag that drives me up a wall more, it's living my best life. Hashtag living my best life. Like, that drives me bonkers.
Good vibes, bro.
Good vibes or YOLO.
Yeah.
Hey, at least the YOLO one's kind of done.
You know, if there's anybody in space that's not exactly, you know, a believer, that I love a lot, of the Stoics. I love the Stoics, man. They have that sensibility of what you really can control. Like, I remember when we were young, we kind of talked about that in the podcast today. You look at a rock star, and, you know, these people are just committing suicide, you know, slowly. They're drinking themselves to death. But they have everything the world could offer them. They have adulation, they have money, they have, you know, everything you could dream of, but they're somehow unfulfilled. And that really irked me when I was a kid. You know, I was like, how can all these people have the same story? All these rock stars, all these successful people, they still are unfulfilled. Like, there is something wrong about that hedonistic fulfilling of the flesh. Like, you're living your best life now, but what about tomorrow? Like, you're going to start all over again, aren't you, buddy? It's going to be some new retail therapy or some new compliment from so-and-so that you don't really care about, and this is going to set you on the right, you know, like, think about how weak that is.
Yeah.
You know, like you really want your lifeline to be dependent upon that kind of crap? And when people ask them that question, if you really ask them that question, they're probably going to be like, yeah, no, I don't think that's a good idea, you know? Unless you're talking to an all-out narcissist sociopath, in which case you probably will never know what they're thinking. But yeah,
I mean, we've completely replaced like personal relationships with just online validation from the world. I remember I was watching this thing on Joe Rogan. It was with this guy. He was in Africa, and he was, I don't know what he does, but he was talking to some people in a tribe or something, and like super good looking guys, and like great physiques, great builds, and he was like, "You guys can come to America. I can get you modeling jobs. I can get you tons of money, women, everything." And they were just looking at him quizzically, and they were like, "America, is that the place where people throw themselves off buildings?" And like that whole concept of suicide and everything to them is just so foreign. And to us, it's like, you know, our demand for materialism and the world it's literally killing us. And so, you know, that's where it's like these personal relationships and building brotherhood, you know, man, it, as I mentioned earlier, like the wonders that it does to the guys that are in groups like this, is just, it's crazy, like what it does.
Yep. We need to be excited about talking about it. Sometimes I forget, David, and you're reminding me now. You know, like I need to be excited about sharing that with people, because it's like, yeah, no, wait a minute. This brotherhood is not the same thing that you think I'm talking about. It's not the same, and you need to understand that the bonds that are being forged over years of accountability and being honest and operating like a body, it's something like you've never seen. It's going to be unknown territory to you. So you can't just nod your head. You know, you're not going to know. And we need to be excited about sharing that with people, because I feel like the superficial understanding for these bonds, like friendship, brotherhood, it's been sabotaged by the culture, by social media. Like they think they have friends, they think they have brothers, but like, do you really have friends and brothers? You know, are these really those people in your life? Are they going to be there for you when everything goes straight to hell? You know, are they? So,
Hey Glenn, I see you here. If you want to jump in the conversation, feel free to send a request. Jake commented too, which I remember like reading Rollo's book. This is something he said back. See, I noticed on many church websites that most upcoming events are for women, barely anything for men. And that's probably partially like a chicken and egg problem too, because it's like, well, my church is 70% women, so I'm just gonna keep doing everything for women. It'd be interesting to see kind of like a demographic on like take like 100 churches and see what their audience is. Looks like Glenn's gonna join us for a bit.
cool.
Glenn was a former pastor, so it'll be interesting to hear his take. He definitely has. I'd call him like a red pill former pastor.
Yeah, Glenn's awesome, man.
But yeah, I think it's, you know, I think we've talked about it before too. Like men have like, you know, we get one event a year. They'll have like a men's like night. I know at the church I used to go to here, that was literally the thing. You know, and to be fair, a lot of the churches do have like groups, and they always push everyone to small groups. But it's like, I would say it's not done in the right way, and it's not done in the expectations. Like it should almost be like trying to make it sound like a requirement, in my opinion, because I would say how they structure everything, it's like they check the boxes of Christianity by going to church on Sunday. And then they have this like auxiliary thing of like, if you want to go to a group, you can go to a group, great. But it's not like, I almost think they should lead with the groups rather than lead with the Sunday service, if that makes sense. Because I think what you gain out of a small group of people that you're connected to is way more than what you gain out of church on Sunday morning. You know, and that's just that's just a structure problem. I don't know really what the answer to that is.
Yeah. Well, you got to be able to go through it, man. You got to go through the awkward experience of letting somebody leave you, and you're gonna have to go through the awkward experience of being betrayed. You're gonna have to go through the horrors of brotherhood, you know, and that's what you got to do. Be prepared for it. But you have to understand that those horrors are what end up building you. And they're way less of a horror than looking back on a rerun show of a Sunday every single
You
day.
guys got some weird background sound. You hear that, Dave?
On me or on
No, I think on John Joe.
I don't hear
Or maybe I could be the only one that's hearing that, but
No,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't know where that was coming. I heard it too.
Like,
There it is. There it is.
what's that?
I don't hear it. You guys keep going.
Me from you.
I heard it too. Man. Yeah.
I think.
Well,
Um,
I think what prevents people from intimacy, and you see this with men. Is it still going on?
no, we're good.
Okay. I think what men need to realize is that being intimate, like, is it's again this problem with nomenclature, right? Like,
Yo,
what's up, Clint?
what?
Oh, we lost him.
He's there for a second.
Dude, I still
Bounce.
hear that weird sound.
I
What's
think
going
that's
on?
dude.
Dave, mute yourself for a second and see if it goes away.
Okay.
All right.
Like it just went away.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's Dave. I don't know what's going on there. Weird.
What's going on, fellas?
Hey, Glenn.
Let's try not dropping this phone this time, right? You know? There we go. So, how you guys
We got
doing?
you, man. Good, good. How have you been? I see you had a YouTube channel problem, huh?
Yeah. Somebody complained and got my channel taken down.
Oh gosh.
So, and it was like right before monetization too. Like I was like there, you guys. I was like 60 subs away, and then it just went away. But oh well, it is
Did
what
they
it is.
like full out cancel it, or are they
Oh
just
yeah,
trying to,
they shut it down. They made it to where like I could only download the content, the videos, and that's it.
Dude,
But
I'm so sorry, brother.
yeah, it's not a big deal. Just made a new one, and then opened up a Rumble, and gonna continue doing what I do. You know, I'm not
Right.
gonna. It's petty. It's like, you know, it's somebody didn't like the correction video I did on them, and they decided to. I'm assuming because I don't know. I'm only assuming because after I made this correction video, then my channel got taken down. So,
Yeah.
Who'd you correct?
in that
Maybe you want to leave that out.
in that video, let's just say I corrected Abba and Preach. I corrected Alex from Playing with Fire, and I addressed some John Anthony stuff. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, as far,
Like,
Yeah.
as far as the topic of the day, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on what
oh
we've been
man,
talking about.
this is a topic, you know, and this is a topic that I struggle with, you know, honestly. I was in somebody's chat not too long ago. I think it was it right response, or is Pastor Joel something? He's out of Texas, uh, and he had a video, and made a comment on there about, like, you know, the feminization of the church, right? The modern church, or the Protestant or evangelical section of the church. And I was just like, you know, the fact that like the church used to be what influenced culture, and now the church has allowed culture to influence the church and change foundational things like scriptural things because it wants to fit a narrative of all inclusiveness or make everybody feel better about things. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, we go from no women in leadership from a biblical standpoint to having female pastors, and we're told that we're being misogynists because we don't accept that. And it has nothing to do with me accepting it. It's in the Bible. It's God's word said this, not me. I didn't write this. It's not Glenn's word. This is God's word. If we say we're following God's word and we want to be disciples of Christ, then shouldn't we obey and follow the Bible, the scriptures? Or are they just you know, there as guidelines, or are they supposed to be there to just kind of good rules to live by, but you don't have to actually abide by them? You know, does that make sense? Like, that's kind of where I see the church at these days.
Yeah, culture is definitely that's influencing so much of it. And I think, you know, it started in the 60s as, you know, the feminist movement started. It'd be interesting to see, like, I kind of, like, I wish I was older. I wish I got to see it, like, rather than I only get to hear about the changes.
I
But,
could say I noticed it in my time. Like I'm
mhm.
38, and I'm not that old, much older. I'm like 10 years older than you. But even just that 10 years, I mean, I definitely have seen it. I remember the power team. Remember like the bodybuilders on TBN? They'll go up there and they're like lifting all this heavy weight and they're like lifting for Christ and stuff. I forgot what they were called. Was it the power
I
team?
don't think I've
Dude,
heard of that.
bro.
You never seen that?
I don't know.
Dude, they're ripping phone books in half.
Yeah, they're just like
Yeah,
raw
it's
and like just
badass.
like they were just like deadlifting like ungodly amount of weight and they were just stacked and it was cool. It was very masculine. It was just yeah, man stuff. And then now we got, you know, what we have now. And
Not bad.
nobody in church is promoting weightlifting. You never see that going down at church. You know, that so it's just kind of like why did it change? Like what was so wrong about pro masculine, you know, things in church? I mean, you would think that would be the one place in this on this earth that people could go to and, you know, not feel shame for their nature, you know, their masculine nature or their feminine nature. That's the one place that they could go and that could flourish in a healthy biblical way.
Yep,
But
100%.
hey,
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I think like you know how some people get this conception in their head because they hear a study, they'll be like, red meat is bad. You
mm,
know, or like I can't eat red meats because it's gonna give you heart disease. And they like fail to realize like, well, most of those case studies were participants who volunteered and they also had bad smoking habits and drinking habits because they also ate a lot of red meat. You know, and I feel like
as you say that as I'm vaping, yeah.
yeah, me too, bro. So, and it's like with the masculine traits, they make them so that the misogynist, the chauvinistic, all the negative attributes that can be present with the masculine traits, they make that synonymous with masculinity, and the baby goes out with the bathwater. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, red meat's not bad, masculinity's not bad. It's the way it was being ingested, cooked up, and all the other stuff around it that sort of perverted it. And so it was just a quick move. It was like one of those overcorrections, man.
Well, it's
And it's
also
like,
like the way they label it though, right? Like, oh, all masculinity is bad. It's almost like saying all black people are run late.
Yeah.
I mean, although that might be true, at least with all the people, all my black friends and family, that's definitely true. But doesn't mean it's true for all of them. But it's just like when we put a blanket statement like that, and we're trying to label all one group the same, that is what we called racism or bigotry for the longest time, right? You know, so if we're all individuals, then we need to treat each other as individuals, you know. And I tell guys it's the same thing too. Like just because a girl broke your heart, put you through a bunch of unnecessary problems, and you got burned, doesn't mean that you need to look at all women the way that you look at her. You could definitely look at that one that way. Yep, that one is bad. That's a bad one. Okay, but don't view all women the same way, because why are you making all women pay the consequence or the price for one woman's mistakes? Same thing. Like, so just because, yes, there have been guys that have done really bad things to women and have abused their position of authority also in the church and in the home, does not mean every guy is going to do that. Doesn't mean every guy will do that. You know, it means that every guy is capable of doing that, just like every woman is capable of doing something bad.
Yep. This comment just brought up no fault divorce and
Oh man.
and how that changed the game on everything. And that's I think that's probably, we could look back on that time. That could be one of the biggest changes in human history on how we interact among the sexes, because you used to have a real reason. You do that in some states, I think, still.
Yeah, there's some states that
Like
require
Texas, I
fault.
believe.
Yeah, well, I think what it is, like they all have adopted some form of no fault, but in order to receive like alimony or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that, that you have to have a fault in certain states. But in like California and like I think it's only 13 or a little bit more than that, 13 states or so, you don't need a reason. You can just be like, you know what, the breath stinks. I want out, and I'm
yeah,
taking half. It's like it's crazy.
yeah.
That
Wow.
was Ronald Reagan's most biggest mistakes that he writes about. He wrote a letter to his son before he passed, and in there, that was his biggest regret. Yeah,
It
but
is. It's interesting to hear other, like, I didn't know Japan, like, there's the opposite almost of no fault. Like, if you can sue, like, your spouse for cheating on you. Like, if you catch your spouse cheating on you, you get to sue your spouse, like the spouse and the person they were cheating with. Like, they protect the
yeah.
marriage family unit there.
Well, if you
And
sue your spouse, aren't you suing yourself in a way?
yeah, I'm not. I think it would be like the assumption is you're getting divorced now, and then so you're separate in that sense. But um,
Okay.
I don't know how it actually plays out.
What's crazy is though is like as I get the culture maybe has leaned towards, no fault and accepting that as a norm or something that's okay. But why the church? I mean, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Why the church though? Because you would think that the church, all because they're supposed to be the light, they're supposed to be the guide. They're supposed to be what edifies, what helps level people up, right? They're supposed to help motivate you to become more Christ-like. Pastors are supposed to be giving you instructions and how to walk your faith out, and just that's what they're there for. They're not there to be a nice building with some really nice stained glass where a guy in a suit gets a private jet and gets to travel the world. That's not what they're there for. They're there for to really save souls and help people become more Christ-like. So why a place like that does not actually condemn, the divorce as the way, like why don't they do that is my question.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, apparently the Christian divorce numbers are like kind of similar to the general population, which is
Well, it's
appalling.
it's like 30%, I think it is. Christian divorce, from what I understand, the last time I looked at it, I thought it was about 30%. Now, it is a lot lower if you happen to be in ministry and you are connected into your church and you just like you're more involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it drops down to like 1.5 or 1.4%. So it drops
Well, that's
significantly low if you are somebody in ministry and,
that,
and deeply connected
that is
into your
that is the
congregation.
problem with those statistics, because so many people wear the Christian label that really probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Um, so, but
So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's not much difference between Christian marriages, the average Christian marriage and the average non-Christian marriage. You know,
Good
just
point.
one decides to dedicate 2 hours on Sunday to go to another building and hang out with some people that they talk about later.
yeah,
Yeah. I think the same could be
I mean,
said for the Christian people in general. There's not much difference between them and somebody who doesn't believe either, which is
That's
true.
crazy though, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I'm not the best representative of Christianity. I'll definitely admit that. But I sit there and I look at some of these, very prominent Christian leaders, and I'm like, I really can't tell the difference from between you and somebody else. Like, even the message that they're speaking doesn't seem any more different than a positive,
Tony
inspired
Robbins.
yeah, like where's the biblical, lesson there? Where's the Holy Spirit coming in and edifying my soul? What am I taking away from this other than, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and I can feel good about that. Like
I
where's the
think
church?
one thing I think one thing too, like a factor at play, is the church's unwillingness to offend. And because there are a lot of offensive things in the Bible in terms of being compared to culture today. And like church leaders, and just churches in general, they do not want to offend others because, one, like Mike, like what you were saying earlier, they need people in the seats. They need the money. They're treating it as a business rather than as a way to reach others. And even like an example, because you're bringing up like women as pastors, if we go back to like Second Timothy, I don't know if I've ever heard a sermon on Second Timothy. And then when you do hear people talking about it, like people that are at odds with it or questioning it, and then all of a sudden it's like some church leader will just put it into the tiniest of context where it's like, oh, that was just a letter specifically to a church in Ephesus for this specific reason. And it's like, if that letter is going to a church in Ephesus, it applies to any church. And so I think that's a lot of things, a lot of the issues, and where a lot of, we just like, I don't want to say overanalyze, but it's like we take away the true meaning of a lot of passages and stuff just so that we don't offend other people. And it's like we were talking earlier too, that truth or love demands truth, and it's like we have to be truthful about what's in the Bible. It's gonna hurt, and that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, like, the truth is not supposed to make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in the Bible says the truth is going to make you feel good. We have sayings like the truth will set you free. Well, sometimes what the truth will set you free from is from your own, lie that you choose to believe. And once you're faced with that truth, then it's just like you can't avoid the reality of it, and it's crazy because you made a good point. Like, they're like, oh yeah, that was just a letter, or that was a comment made for this specific church in Corinthians because they were doing this thing going on over here, but it was just tailored to them, not for all of us. Well, then could we just do that throughout the whole Bible? Can we just start picking and choosing what passages we want, to accept and not accept? Because if that's the case, like, I'm just start making a list, be like, oh yeah, thou shalt not commit murder. No, that wasn't written to me. But that was written to you, though. I'm allowed to murder. Like, how ridiculous does that sound? You're supposed to take the entire Bible, all of it. You have to accept all or nothing. It's not like pick and choose, a la carte type of ministry. Although I know a lot of places want to do that, but that's not reality. That's not how God is. God's never like, that's basically like the definition of lukewarm.
Yeah.
And from what I know, you get spit out. And I don't like getting spit on, so I definitely don't want to get spit out.
Absolutely.
There's gonna need to be a referendum in the church. The church is gonna have to take a deep look at itself and ask itself, hey, would Jesus want to come hang out here? If Jesus came back right now, just hanging out with, just walking the streets, would Jesus walk into their church and want worship there? Or would he raise holy hell and start flipping tables over and, taking a whip and start beating things with it? Just wondering.
Yeah. No, those are, I think like a lot of people there's this, people are so impressionable. It's like you can tell them that something's good, or like they confuse the fact that like they're really not feeling that good anyway. Like that's my issue. It's like you're really not feeling that great anyway. You're out of shape. You're barely getting through the service, and your life is very, very shallow. Like the pain that you feel in the gym, you qualify that pain with gain. Like these
Yeah.
things are going to give me gain. Like I always tell the guys in the group, like if you find something weird in Scripture or something that is strange, give it your best to understand it. Dig into it. It's awesome. It's fun. All of a sudden, now you're engaged in a study, in something that God has put onto your heart. Pay attention to that stuff. But like to think in your head that you're sacrificing the way you feel because you're embracing truth. Like I don't get that, man. Like you're gonna feel way worse just sitting there doing nothing, or just trying to be comfortable. Like it's just not a good investment, man. You're gonna feel
Well,
like crap anyway.
here's a question, and I think I asked Mike this in a text before, not too long ago. What, you guys know about the servant leader model, right? You guys
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
like that wasn't even a the guy Robert Greenleaf didn't even like get that from Jesus. Like that was not Jesus was not his inspiration at all. Like it was.
I don't know. I know you asked about the history. We're pretty green on the history, but I did see
Uh,
a quote from Dalrock today that he said something about the servant leader model being 99% servant, 1% leader.
yeah, I mean, and because they try to say like, well, Jesus was the perfect example of servant leader. I'm like, was he though? Because I don't look at Jesus as a servant leader in the definition of servant leader, what it really is. Now, I could definitely see him being he served his people. He definitely served. He came here with on a mission. He had a purpose, and he fulfilled what he came to do. Absolutely, and he did it for our best interest, not for his. Like he didn't gain anything from getting beaten and thrown on a cross, right? He didn't get extra points in heaven for that. But so he did it for our salvation. So I get that aspect of it. But if you look at Jesus, he actually displayed all leadership models depending on the situation. There's times where he's washing their feet. There's times where he's, telling them, get behind me, Satan. Stop being a little coward and, listen to what I'm saying. And there's other time where he's correcting them. And there's other time where he's inspiring them. I'm going to build my church on you. Like you're going to be the rock. Like that's inspirational. There's times where Jesus displayed what I would like to think as all different leadership models. He just wasn't the servant leader. You know.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And to think that like the servant leader model is beneficial for the church or for relationships, I just don't see it.
I think it's beneficial to the feminine imperative.
Oh, it's definitely. I mean, of
So it makes
course.
sense.
Like, of course, yes, you, leadership, you big guy, leader. How about you just secretly give me the power and you say you have to do it because you have to serve me? Because if you don't, you're not a good servant leader. And, us women, we just divorce guys if they're not a good servant
I
leader.
just don't get that though. Like, how can you say you're serving your wife if you're enabling bad behavior? Like, how are you serving your kids if you're enabling them to be pieces of crap? That's
Yeah.
not serving. That's actively destroying somebody. So I mean, like, I don't get that. Like, if you're serving somebody, you're doing what's in their best interest, which means you have a firm understanding of the gospel. You have the basics under control as far as Bible study. You know your Bible well enough to know that this is either going to hurt somebody or bring them into a place where they can grow. So are you really serving somebody by letting them have their way every time? No. It's just
No,
garbage.
and it's like here's the other interesting thing about the servant leader model, the way that the church pushes it. Because I don't even think the way that the church pushes it is even remotely close to the way Jesus behaved or Jesus interacted with people and how he operated in his ministry on his time on this earth. Because he was not a pushover. He was never a pushover. He never just let things go just to let things go because he wanted to keep the peace. He never told them, okay, well, you know what? You could believe that. And, you're right. Tell me how you feel. okay, I accept your feelings, and I can see how you feel that way, and I'm sorry. Like, nowhere did Jesus apologize for being Jesus or for being on his purpose. Never said
Yeah,
like, hey,
Jesus is perfect. We're
exactly,
not, so we're definitely going to be apologizing for being retarded dudes.
absolutely.
But like, there's an instance that calls to mind where Jesus did something where I was like, why did he do that? It didn't make sense. But then I had to think about it. So I think it's Matthew 15 where Peter is confronted with the tax collector outside his house, and he's like, have you paid the 2 drachma tax? Has your teacher paid it? This is right after he sees Jesus transfigured on the mountain. He knows the Messiah. He knows Jesus is king. He's actually seeing him deified right before his eyes. And Peter, just being a dumb, just love Peter. He goes back inside. He's like, we need to pay the tax for the temple. And, Jesus kind of drills him. He's like, I am the temple. I own the temple. Did the king pay his own taxes to himself, or do his sons have to pay the taxes? And he's
Hmm.
like, yeah, that was a retarded question. But he's like, still, go out and pay the guy, because he didn't want to, because he was strategic. Jesus was being strategic at that time, because he's like, I don't need that bad press right now. I still have to continue my ministry up until this point. Like, my time has not yet come. So in many ways, he kind of placated somebody because of the strategy to fulfill his ministry. Like,
Did
he
you say
didn't
that
have to
was
pay that
Matthew?
tax.
Matthew what?
Just look up 2 drachma tax.
Okay.
Jesus and the 2 drachma tax.
Okay.
Can
And
It is an odd passage.
Yeah.
me too.
I kind of want to jump back, John, to what you're saying here just a couple minutes ago. Like, with these fathers and husbands that are just leading their families down just down a destructive path. I feel like too, like, us as men, like, we also have to have the humility to, like, be willing to, let others, analyze our leadership and stuff. And I think that's where,
Mm.
again, having brotherhood, allowing yourself to be surrounded by guys that want more from you, that are going to hold you to a standard that's, beyond what you think you can hold yourself to. I think that's, again, just part of the solution to getting guys back in church, getting guys more on fire for their faith, but also getting guys to be taking care of themselves more, being more active, but then also being more present with their own families and the people that are immediately in relationship with them.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it's how does the church promote, fitness, right? Like that's I was part of a church, and my head pastor, and this is when I was a youth pastor and I was, part of the ministry team. Like I was competing in bodybuilding. I had shows, once or twice a year I was getting ready for. And I was told that, I was vain, and that was something that I was going to need to sacrifice. That was going to have to be something that God's going to work on me to sacrifice because I enjoyed competing. Now, mind you, the pastor was like, and is still probably like close to 100 pounds overweight, and has bad health issues because of his obesity, and is a great pastor, but just very soy. And I'm like, well, are you telling me this because you don't like the fact that you are not healthy? So you want me to lower my standards for my health so you don't feel so bad about not measuring up? You know, it's like, how is the church? Because the church doesn't have that environment where it tells you to be healthy, go to the gym, work out. It tells you to not be vain. Oh, if you go to the gym and you're just, trying to get your muscles and stuff, but you're just vanity. It's all vanity,
Yeah,
you
that
You want
know.
topic's
to know what
off.
vanity is? I heard this guy. I'll tell you guys a quick story. Joe and I have to go, but I heard something that was true vanity, and it seriously knocked the wind out of me. There's a guy up north. He's fighting the same battle we are, dude. He's been like a lifelong fitness guy in the church, and he told me the story. He's like, I go up to like an altar call, and he's like, Betty's asking for so and so's diabetes, and so is asking for this other health issue, and it dawned on me. I was like, how vain is it for us to ask God for help that we could have completely circumnavigated with
Yep.
a little bit of self-respect and discipline. Like, that is vain. You want vain, that is vain.
Well, but
Asking
check
God
this
to help
out.
you with a problem where you just didn't have to put those potato chips in your mouth for a year straight. And now you're just, please, God, help. It's like, seriously.
Let me add to that. Let me just add to that. When the Bible talks about God supplying manna for the Israelites when they were, in the wilderness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did the manna ever just fall in their laps?
No.
They actually had to go do something, right? There was an action that they had to go do in order to receive their blessing, right? Okay. That means they had to go look for it. They actually had to go get up and go move and go find the stuff that God blessed them with, right? So the people that are having health issues and they're sitting there praying, oh, I'm just waiting on God to answer my prayer. Well, what are you doing? Are you actively seeking that blessing? Because if you're not doing the action, if you're not doing what's necessary to help receive, because God's not always just going to let you just wake up and you're going to be healed. Not everything's like Benny Hinn come laying hands on you and you fall down and you wake up, you're walking. Like that's not how God operates all the time. Sometimes God blesses you and heals you by giving you the wisdom and understanding, or gets you connected with somebody that's going to help you get through the situation that you're in. He doesn't just snap his fingers and take it away,
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
So it's like if you're not actively working on the blessing that you're seeking, then yeah, it is extremely vain. It's like, could you really say, oh yeah, God, I really did all that I could do, but the blessing didn't come? No, you were lazy. You just wanted to do a lip service and not really commit to it.
Yeah. Expecting a supernatural event for something you could have. Yeah, and that's the wake-up call the church needs, because everybody's saying it anyway, so it just seems normal. It's like, yeah. But, hey, I love you guys. Joe and I are going to dip out, get some rest.
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Glenn.
Yeah, bro.
Brother
Pleasure.
David, I love you. Love you, Brother Mike. And I look forward to next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll do this again.
we got to do a live stream with all
Yeah.
of us on there. So you guys let me know when you guys are free, because I know you guys stay busy. I just got back from Dallas, so I got some downtime, but you guys let me know what your schedule's like, and we can do it.
All right,
Sounds
Glenn.
good, man. We'll make it
Sounds
happen.
good. Love you,
All right.
boys. Love you, boys.
Thanks for jumping on. See ya.
Peace.